to start. Welcome to the Virtual Film Company. Today it's Chris and we're going to be talking about linear television and the future of television. Going to be an interesting discussion as I think that technology is changing completely. For more information about the Virtual Film Company, visit our YouTube channel, which is at Virtual Film Company. We also have a Facebook page and a LinkedIn page. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Chris. Yes. Yes, no, definitely an interesting topic. It's something I think that affects people in different countries differently depending on the infrastructure that is in place. And also demographics are important. I think an older population is more used to watching television, watching any programming in a fashion. I can hear you here in the room. So anyone that might be watching this is Chris and Eric is off Burning Man, and we just decided to have a bit of a casual chat and broadcast this ourselves without our regular cameraman back next month, beginning of next month, after Eric returns from Man. But until then, please bear with us as we figure this out and get things going here. Yeah, I mean, spatial, I think, is not consistent. Was a problem. I could bring a camera in, if, but I can bring a camera in if I can see. And because you're a camera, right? You're an actual camera. Uh, Right, right, right. Go ahead and talk, Chris. Okay, so I can, okay, stop the stream. Okay, tell me if this connects to YouTube. Did this connect to YouTube? Are we on YouTube right now?
I guess so.
Okay, and is it full screen?
I would say so.
It's okay. And you can hear me and everything's fine? Yeah?
I can hear you, but I think I cannot hear me. Okay, now I can.
Well, let's start again then. Okay, so
No, it's fine. It's fine. It's fine now. It was quite the delay, probably.
okay, well, for those of you watching, we're back. This is John and Chris with the Virtual Film Company. Eric is off to Burning Man, and we'll be back in 2 weeks where we'll resume this show with a proper cameraman. Right now, Chris and I are improvising on our own. So for those of you that are not familiar with us and are watching, we're the Virtual Film Company, and you can find us on YouTube under @Virtual Film Company, on Facebook, and on LinkedIn. Today, the topic is the future of television, and specifically whether linear programming has a future. We're seeing, particularly when it comes to demographics, the younger segment of the population more into channels like Tube and others we talk about. So I'm just going to hand it over to Chris to give us a bit more of an introduction.
Yeah, well, I mean, there is a lot in this case to talk about because um, television is for sure one of these big technologies in broadcasting. When we think about first radio came up and then television, and television is such a big part of the information for people today. If it's news, if it's entertainment, shows, and a lot of culture is going into television over the years. But now we have to see that with all the new technologies, and when I'm talking about new technologies, it's not just AI or whatever, it's also social media, it's YouTube basically that changed a lot already. For how long do we have it now? For 15 years, 16 years basically. And Twitch and streaming services and so on and so on. And we see drastical changes in linear television. So big TV stations are losing viewers. Here in Germany, for example, heavily, big broadcasters like RTL, they just had 90% loss of commercials in the last half year. So their revenue was going down for 92%. And that's extreme for a TV station that is just, well, relying on this income in the end. So it seems that this technology is going down. And what's coming next? So what is going to fill the gap? And is this way of a lean back experience where some people like we today now here are sitting in front of a camera, for example, and talking about stuff, and others are sitting at home and watching it. Is that the future? or is everything going into the direction of being interactive, more immersive, and so on and so on? That's the big question. Where are we going to?
Well, I think, Chris, you bring up an interesting question, and that is whether things are going to get more immersive, because, we're here in VR and people can join us here in spatial if they have a cell phone, a browser, or ideally a head-mounted display. And if they have a head-mounted display, they can get a feeling of being immersed in the program. And in fact, come and sit on our beautiful couch here if they join us. But, they can't right now. And people have tried this, and, I applaud them for what they've done so far. But where I see this being, ultra cool in the future is if our characters were smart enough to have our knowledge through AI, perhaps, and people could come in here 24 hours a day, and you and I or whoever would be sitting here giving a show, answering questions, and it would go on. That's, definitely science fiction and possibly fantasy, but I think what is happening is that people, and our show, I mean, for example, is every Wednesday at noon, although we're thinking of changing that time, but it's difficult to be somewhere and participate at a particular time on a particular day, particularly when you can say to yourself, well, why would I bother when I can later on do the same show? Sure, if you had questions for the panel, well, you can actually put those in YouTube as well, and they will be answered. So, I mean, I guess the question comes down to what is the incentive to watch something that is linear, that is being broadcast at a specific time on a specific day? I mean, I don't see that there is any advantage.
Yeah, I mean, okay, the definition of what is a broadcaster? Well, no, I mean, we have so many different types of shows, and I mean, there were also a lot of channels that try to integrate, for example, social media. I remember that with Twitter feeds and some boards where people could write some comments or whatever kind of stuff, for example, right? So,
Yep.
and yeah, I don't think that was the biggest success in the end, because in my opinion, lots of them were just stopping it now. In Germany, we had a big hype, and I learned about Twitter from the second German television, because in 2009, when Twitter started, every second day in the main news show, someone said something like, "Oh, there was someone on Twitter, some celebrity or politician or whatever, and he or she said this and that, and it's so important." So they're really pushing Twitter, and they probably did not realize that they are pushing their competition, the future competition, because right, it's not their service, it's a service of a different company, and they brought so many people to Twitter, like me. Like I thought, okay, I have to be in there to see what they're doing there. And in the end, they realized, like, oh my goodness, basically what they're doing is the same what we do. We tell news, right? So today they're not doing that anymore. They're trying to keep social media out of their broadcastings. But they, additionally to that, they did not establish any homegrown, let's say, possibility, technology, whatever, where people can really interact with them while broadcasting, right? So that is a pity. And now they're starting to use YouTube, for example, and about the Ukraine war, there are a lot of questions from people. So they have experts sitting on YouTube talking to some anchorman, and you can write questions. That's good. But basically, it's not their broadcast anymore, it's YouTube. So it's somehow a little bit crazy and insane. And I've got the feeling that those broadcasting stations don't have a proper plan for the future. And on top of that, besides of the technology and how to use it, they don't have the real idea. What will be the content of the future, right? And how do we present it? I think that's a huge problem for them.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's the integration of, well, I think, as you're saying, the attempt to integrate social media and still keep their current business model. I mean, I don't think that works. I mean, the only time I can think of where people would watch a broadcast is if something is happening that's really, really time critical. I, here in the United States, remember, 9/11 definitely, where everyone was glued to the television, and that instance, I think one can make an argument for television stations because they're able to bring you the news instantly. But you know, how many big events are there like that can rationalize the infrastructure that's required to do it? There aren't
Yeah, I
that
mean,
many, and I think. Go ahead.
yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, that was one of the experiences that I had also. 9/11 was a big breaking point because also a lot of TV stations around the world saw they have to invest more into live graphics, real-time graphics, to be able to respond in a short amount of time. And they saw that they did not invest enough at that time. So there was a real boom for honor graphic systems and other stuff. And newsroom systems to be able to communicate with a lot of journalists at the same time and stuff. And this immediacy, I think that would be the right word for that, in presenting news when it happens. Everything that is live is for sure still the big thing for the broadcasting industry, especially when we think about sports. I mean, the biggest deals at the moment in this area are probably all the sports clubs, if that's Champions League and the British Premier League and the German Bundesliga and what the heck. Right, they're making the biggest deals in broadcasting today. And in the last weeks and months, we had a lot of German players that also did TV series, right? If it's the boat, that was a series about the submarine and so on. And they were shooting for some years now, investing money because they wanted to get against Netflix. And now they pulled back. Not enough viewers, does not pay off for them, right? So they're getting out of these business areas, and the only thing that's left for them is live stuff. But now you have to think about that. Thinking about, for example, sports, those leagues, for example, like the British Premier League and so on, they are not depending anymore on a broadcaster. Why should they do something like a contract with a German television station or Sky or whatever to broadcast them? They can do it themselves. They can stream themselves. It's not a big deal. They need a production company with cameras and stuff, and then just push it out and take money for it, right? So it's not that you need a big broadcasting station anymore. And I guess that will be a hard touchdown for the broadcasters, because the only thing they will be left with is their own news.
Yeah, right. And that, I think, is the problem, is, what is attractive enough news to get an audience to follow your station. And that's the whole trick behind news. I mean, I started off on newspapers. My daily assignment was basically to go out and find a story that I could come back with. I didn't really care what kind of a story, but the more sensationalistic, the better. But even if it was local color, that was okay. But I had to come back with something every single day. But that was just. I mean, we were the only newspaper in town, right? And
Hmm.
I think one of the things that all media outlets need to contend with these is the fact that anyone that has a YouTube channel is really a media outlet.
Yeah, definitely. That big change, and on top of that, now we talked about that a lot of times, is, I mean, being able to produce images, for example, quite fast. Well, if you don't have 10 graphics designers or 12 cameramen somewhere today, finding someone that has a live camera running on a spot where something happens and just taking his stream and then creating with generative AI some pictures to that. You can do that with 2 or 3 people. You don't need the big setup anymore. And then just distribute it on your, I don't know, Twitch, YouTube, whatever kind of outlet, let's say. So it's never been easier to create content in a short amount of time, in my opinion, without having big skills in this area.
Yeah, or I mean, I do cover news stories still, and sometimes have to laugh at the antiquated, in my opinion, equipment that many of the stations still have. And I was looking at upgrading my camera, and one of the things that I noticed is that most of the new cameras now come with the ability to connect to a network. So, you could, if you have good connectivity, just stream, straight from where you're at to say, and
I
that
mean,
in the
sure,
past just so expensive. I mean, you remember initially the satellite trucks and the hassles that you know, and now you can just do it with the Wi-Fi connection. It's
absolutely. And 5G is a big plus, let's say. It's a big hit. I think we talked about that yesterday in preparation a little bit. I already talked about that. For example, for the coronation of King Charles III, the BBC used a lot of private 5G networks just to be able to have the whole area from Buckingham Palace to the cathedral and so on covered, right? To be able to have that. They also used Ultra HD cameras. They provided or broadcasted with those networks. That's amazing. I mean, imagine in the future when you have full coverage of 5G networks and you can have the highest resolutions and make your own show from anywhere. Have a good camera in your hands and then make a great Ultra HD broadcasting of an event or whatever kind of stuff without having any additional setup. Just turn on the cam, stream, there you go. That is for sure amazing. I mean, I'm curious if the broadcasting stations would adopt that more. I mean, the BBC did that here, and that's for sure clever. I really would like to see if broadcasters in Germany, like RTL or others that are doing more entertainment, for example, if they find ways to use that, to utilize that technology for their advantage, right? But in this case, you need to invest into ideas.
well, I think the cool thing about doing that is no way could one wire that cables, and wireless technology in the past hasn't been that great. It's been very expensive, but did have these 5G base stations that, I mean, you could some amazing real-time switching from, basically put the whole thing together from, however many different cameras. I think it would amazing to actually do that.
Definitely. I mean, the possibilities are more or less endless in that case. The big question is, do we maybe need something like a complete new start over for broadcast, or is it more a development that will come, silent, that we will see the big broadcasters dying because they cannot keep up with the fast development of streaming and whatever, and yeah, that the smaller ones, small production companies that are fast and have good ideas, will just take over. They will get more and more interest, and on the other side, the interest will fall down for the big ones, and that's it. Is this the way it goes? I mean, that's the question.
Well, I think you kind of, earlier on you mentioned advertising. And I think when it comes to commercial broadcasting, advertising is a big driving factor unless you're sponsored by the government or whatever. And then it comes down to things. One is, watching the advertising. But the other, which is pulling people away from this traditional method of television, that there's really no accountability when it comes to broadcasting stuff over the air and advertising. You don't really actually know how many people saw something, know that it was displayed, but don't know there. And a lot easier to gauge response online. So there's many pluses, and one of the questions I keep asking myself is, so I think that the answer to that question, which advertiser or what advertisers are going to sponsor or advertise on what particular shows. I think those are, which shows are the most popular, right?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean,
Uh,
that, let's say, this old way that we had in broadcasting was like you had a sponsor for your show, so that was a constant flow of money for you, or you just had your commercial break and 5 to 10 commercial little spots showing there, and those bookers just tried to calculate, well, at that time we will probably target this type of audience, and those people will buy our products. The more you know about your audience, if you're something like YouTube, whatever, you know about each and every single person who's watching a stream. You know what they watched before, what interests they have, what channels they already booked, and stuff like that. So you have much more possibilities to target the right individual commercial to them, right? So that's a big difference to classic broadcasting. But I guess that in the future, anyways, because just of the fact that we have so much content out there, that the programs will get more and more into this direction of being, special interest, let's say, right? We will have more single programs that just concentrate on, let's say, sports on the one hand, but also in news, on different types of news, and whatever kind of entertainment you like. We see that already, that we have some channels are just broadcasting real life television, right? Reality TV and stuff like that for a long time. It's somehow this special interest field. But again, producing all that stuff and just let it run without a back channel, for example, I don't know if that works. I think people want to interact. So there is, I think the lack of community for most broadcasting, that you don't have this possibility to talk immediately with your friends about it and stuff like that. That's quite a problem. They tried to solve that with apps. Like, you had an app for your RTL television, and you could watch together, make watch parties with your friends and stuff like that.
Oh,
In Germany, it never took off. It's I don't know. It was not interactive enough for people. So I'm really curious to see what direction they take in the future.
yeah. I mean, there's just so much content out there. I mean, that's the big issue in my opinion, that I have a smart TV, Amazon, and I mean it's really an a big advertising box for Amazon. What it is, it's so tied into Amazon's ecosystem that send me alerts about sales on Amazon. Everything pretty much revolves around it, but it's a smart TV, and so one can load apps on it. But there's just so many apps. It's like,
Sure.
we talk about the television stations, but there's also an issue with the cable stations. For example, the company that I use, Comcast, would love me to
Mm.
sign up for a package, which would include news and all of that, but I don't. And, instead they, I guess, lure me to their service through something called Peacock, which is an ad-based service. And
Right.
I'm seeing more and more of those where, you can watch, it seems hundreds or not thousands of movies of different genres, as long as you're willing to put up with the ads. And
Yeah.
it
I
just
think
comes
Peacock
down to,
is
go ahead.
Right. I think Peacock is the streaming service of NBC, isn't it?
You might be right. I don't know who owns them. They have a deal with Comcast.
Mm. Yeah. I mean, you would say that this type of let's say presentation or use case is better for you. You like that Peacock service, or do you say no? That is
Well, no, because I mean, so there's also, what is it, Freebie, and
yeah.
I mean, there's so many, and I mean, I mean, then there's YouTube, right? I mean, I could spend my life watching stuff on YouTube. I could spend my life watching stuff on any of these channels, and it
Definitely, yes,
just
sure.
comes down to, how much choice does one want? I mean, YouTube to me is utilitarian in that it teaches me. I can go there and find out how to do things. Good tutorials up there. Once or twice I've watched YouTube movies that have been good, but I'm not there for the movies, and I'm not there for me. YouTube is just for destructive stuff. I mean, but
Yeah, I mean,
people. Go ahead.
no, just to the YouTube point. I mean, I've got a little bit my problems with YouTube. I like it, but if YouTube is the only big star left in the universe, let's say, right? Everything is going to YouTube. Everyone will upload content to YouTube. This will be the big thing where everyone gets content from, let's say. Well, it's somehow a problem because how to sort all that stuff out? YouTube has to bring all the content to the people. It's really, really hard for them to pick the right stuff between billions of minutes that will be uploaded all the time, and you might get heavily distracted. So it's I don't know if it's overwhelming somehow. So sometimes a catalog, like you probably have it on Peacock or all the others, also on Netflix, and Pluto TV is also a free
Right.
service where you get
Yep.
stuff from CBS and so on. There's so many. Sometimes it's quite nice just to watch them because, well, it's a limited number of shows that you can see, and you're not scrolling over years from over the science fiction whatever category or stuff, and you cannot decide what to watch in the end. It's yeah, I don't know. It's getting somewhat out of hand, in my opinion, and I think in the end it comes a lot. In many cases, it comes back to the point that people are just asking friends, like, "What did you watch?" Yeah, I'm going to watch that too. Let's, because there's so much stuff and you cannot see all of it, right? And on top of that, I mean, you get bored. Like you have a new show that might be nice. You watch the first 2 episodes, and it's not exactly what you want, and then you have 200 other shows waiting for you. So I know so many series I started, I never watched them to the end. Might have been that they get much better and more interesting, and you don't give them the time to tell their story because just the next one is around the corner. And if that happens also to news and things, right? You have news from Ukraine, you have news from whatever, Argentina, whatever, and you always get distracted more and more and more and more because there's even always more stuff. Will you find the real important news for yourself? That's the big question.
Well, I think that's another, I mean, whole can of worms together.
Yeah.
And, I mean, that used to be, the answer to that used to be very simple, I think, was that, went to the cinema and before they showed the main film, they would show a news trailer, or you watched it on television or listened to it on the radio or bought a newspaper. Today,
Right.
there's so much information that the trick is to be able to disseminate what's real and what isn't real. Fortunately, disinformation or sensationalistic information, I should say, sells a lot better than stuff that's boring. It's
I mean,
sad, but it does.
definitely, and especially for the classic TV stations or broadcasters. Well, if they don't have something that is really wow, amazing and over the top and whatever, well, people will say like, "Oh, that's the news you're presenting. Come on, I can have more clickbait on YouTube, right?" And people are just showing you, "Oh, did you see that? This is so amazing." And when you click on it, it's like, "Oh my goodness." Anyways, but they get you. And how to keep up with this? And if you want to be a good broadcaster or good journalist presenting proper news, research, whatever. Um,
No,
it's
you're
a
very
big
correct there.
challenge.
It I think there's ethical obligations. I mean, certainly as a journalist, I had ethical obligations to follow a code of conduct, which most
Yeah,
YouTubers don't have or will specifically break just to attract an audience. How do you compete with that? That's,
yeah,
as you say, become very, very competitive. And I mean, that's why I use it as an information source. I don't go to YouTube to say what I should watch today. Although it does. I mean, YouTube, has looked at what I watch and it does make recommendations, but I haven't watched any of the top recommend. Maybe it
yeah,
now wants me to pay because YouTube also has
yeah.
pay various pay schemes, including pay not to see advertising and then pay to get additional access to
Right.
other channels.
And maybe I mean, it could be that we're coming back to this very classical beginning, as you also talked about that. When, in the early years, you went and bought your newspaper and you knew um, the people writing the different columns and whatever. And maybe we're coming back that people just say, no, I do trust these journalists. I will subscribe to their channel and watch what they have to say. And that might be, again, the Washington Post or don't know what's the biggest one in New York Times. In the only U.S. Newspapers I know. Anyway, so maybe we're coming back to this just because of quality. That people say, okay, enough of this. I don't know, clickbait and bull squirt. I don't know, stuff that people are talking, not researched, just lies and framing and whatever. We want to come back to good journalism, to good content, and probably we will have to pay for that. And if it's visual or just written or something in between or interactive, as long as we get good information, well, we are fine with it. Would be great.
Yeah, and as you say, it's the information that we are looking for. Goes back to that question about demographics, who's watching what's being put out there and which advertisers want to target that specific group. Right now, I would say with broadcast television, target group, older people, lower income demographic as well, because I imagine most people that have, I mean, I don't know anyone that has cable or fiber that also has broadcast television. A lot of people out there. But, those things cost money. So, I mean, and that's the
Definitely.
other interesting thing about this whole model. Europe, I believe in Germany, England, I know for sure that there's a television tax and they get quite
Yeah.
strict about it. They have their, I've heard horror stories about it. But other than that, one is really getting free programming. And I think
Yeah.
what
Well,
happens
that's
to the people that can't afford to pay for cable anymore? Other means, all of a sudden, these TV stations go out of business and are no longer broadcasting. Where do they get their news from? Entertainment from? So what's next?
right. I mean, sure. Yeah, I mean today, if you like to see everything and you pay for Amazon and Disney and for Netflix and for whatever, yeah, you can pay several $100s, I guess, every month, and not anyone can do that. But for example, in Germany we have this television tax somehow, right? You're still paying for it. You have to pay for it. It's around 17, 18 euros per month, and
Oh, really? That
well,
much? Wow. Okay.
yeah, 18, 18, not 88, 118,
No, no,
18,
right. But that's still,
right? Yeah, it's money.
uh,
And the problem is that those stations are getting more and more ineffective. There's tons of money getting in there, and you get less program on the screen. They could, I mean, with altogether, they have 8.5 billion euros every year for the public broadcasting stations. With 8.5 billion euros, you can do some program. Really, you can. But it's getting worse and worse and worse. And we had several scandals now, and they found out that in Berlin, for example, where I am, the public broadcaster here, just for the city of Berlin, for this area, well, they wasted tons of money, and they paid their bosses mm, big amounts of salaries that others did not receive. And if they retired, they received still 20K per month because they wanted it somehow. And so
okay.
people were really angry, like, okay, we're paying this 18 every month, and then you pay yourself 20K per month just because you retired. What the heck is up with you guys, right?
Right,
That
right.
cannot be. And that's not what it's for. It's for educating the people, giving them access to unbiased information. And a lot of different parties tried to infiltrate those stations. Like you had conservatives and a lot of from the Green side and so on, getting in there to push their their ideas and ideologies to people, right? And that's not the idea of this. The idea of our public broadcast was to be a control medium, control politics, be open, be always, in all the developments and tell the people what's going on there. If it's on the right wing, on the left wing, whatever, show where are the good sides and where are the bad sides. But if many of those people, journalists, now are coming from the parties, they are in those parties, well, how open are those people?
And I mean, I think that's a real problem. And that's
Yeah.
something that's happened here in the United States as well, is that these newspapers or media outlets, I should say, have become polarized and it's hard to find one that is unbiased and just presents the news. you know.
Yeah.
Well, the Guardian, I think, is a good example of a newspaper that does that to a large extent.
Okay.
They're publicly funded.
So is that PBS?
No, the Guardian is a
Oh, the Guardian.
base.
Sorry.
Right, right, right.
Yeah, sure. No, but is the Guardian publicly funded?
I believe so. I don't believe that they get any money from advertising revenue.
Okay, didn't know that. Interesting.
But I might
Yeah, I
not
mean,
be.
yeah, I
So
mean, but
I'm
it
looking
would
it
be
up
important.
here. Yeah, so in 220, more than 1.5 million readers supported the Guardian Financial.
Okay.
Guardian's total revenues increased by 3.4% in
Wow.
2022. So yeah, I mean, every article you see, it has a little thing underneath it saying, help us. But
Yeah. No, I mean that's basically crowdfunding or not.
yeah, I guess so. I mean, I guess so. It's they've been around for a long time, so it's the
Yeah.
original crowdfunders, right?
Yeah, I mean it's a great idea. Anyways, crowdfunding, in my opinion, is one of the big, probably future guarantees for journalists, I guess, right? Yeah, if you want to make a story about this or that, yeah, go to one of the platforms and try to get the money and be able to provide your results, right? If
Hmm.
it's in that case a book or a PDF that you do or a documentary, a film or whatever. I mean, there's so many possibilities to put your content out. But the most important thing is that you have the possibility to be able to travel, to gather informations, talk to people and stuff. And if you don't want to rely just on one, I don't know, company that gives you the money or broadcaster that has a certain agenda, maybe the only way is you're rich or do crowdfunding.
Right, and just I looked up a little bit more information on the Guardian, and it's interesting
Mm.
in that the Guardian was founded in 1821, but in 1936 they started a trust which created to secure the financial and editorial independence of the Guardian in perpetuity and to safeguard the journalistic freedom, liberal values of the Guardian, free from commercial or political interference. Then
Wow.
this is kind of cool. They go on to say that profits are reinvested in its journalism rather than distributed to owners or shareholders. Oh yeah, I mean, it, yeah, it definitely was crowdfunded before there was even
Yeah.
crowdfunding. That's interesting. Yeah.
You said 1936. That's great.
That's when the trust, let's see, yeah,
Started. Okay.
1936 was when the trust was established, but the newspaper was first established in 1821 as the Manchester Guardian, changed its name in 1959, along with its sister paper, The Observer and the Guardian Weekly, part of the Guardian Media Group. Got trust. Yeah, I mean,
Hmm.
to me, it's one of the best sources of news around. It does seem to
Yeah.
be very open-minded.
Yeah. I would think so. I would think so. Yeah. Yeah. I
Good.
mean,
Well, any go ahead.
no, no. I mean, when I think back, also in Germany, there are big changes. You know, we had magazines like the Mirror, Spiegel, that was really big in the 60s here, heavily against, yeah, the state. Basically, they were really left wing and checking everything up. And today, they do, they have a quite big YouTube channel. And so now what they're doing a lot is real crime series. And what they
Right.
show there is like, oh, that guy was a big kingpin in this city or whatever. And sometimes it sounds like they really put them onto a monument, and you think like that has nothing to do with political, um, you know, journalism anymore, because it's about the clicks, right? They make money with that.
Exactly. Exactly.
So horrible.
Yeah, but I think that's just another example of an industry that has had to scramble. Many people in the industry or publications have failed simply because people we stopped reading print material. I still get a copy of Wired magazine every month that comes in the mail, but how long that will go on for you that are still
Yeah,
published.
right.
Good. Well, should we wrap it up for the day then?
Yeah, I think so. What's an interesting talk, and I guess that that topic will cross our lines again in the future.
Oh, I mean, it's definitely an interesting topic, and one thing that we perhaps we can talk about next week is, I think, and we didn't touch on this at all, is like TikTok and
Yeah.
there's social media platforms that provide, these short form videos. I think in many ways, younger generation is looking at these as their news. It's, and it's being delivered on a cell phone, which also changes things completely. So I think we have a lot to talk about. Yeah, it's been a good show. This is John and Chris from the Virtual Film Company. We're missing Eric today. He's
Yeah.
way to Burning Man. And Chris and I will be back next week at time to continue this discussion. So thank you for watching, and I hope everyone has a wonderful day.